Hey guys, welcome back to the back room. This week we're going to make a couple cabs. I was digging through some boxes. I found this little guy right here. I think it's like green. Got some red in it. Got some thick thing of caliche stuck on the outside. So I'll wet this down and we'll take a closer look at it, and I'll show you kind of what it looks like, and then we will chop it up and make some cabs out of it. Okay, so here's what it looks like wet. You have this layer here. Is that kind of like a brownish yellow, some orange? Got some definitely layering here. Looks like you got a bunch of chalcedony down here. It does get to green in the bottom, a little mixed in red there. A little bit of stripes. Got some caliche stuck on the outside. This green here looks like it's just something stuck on the outside too. So yeah, we'll cut this in a saw. Maybe I'll just cut this in half this way. Oops, sorry. Cut it in half this way. Give us at least a flat side to work with on each side, and then we will see what we can do from there. So let's cut this in half, see what we get. Okay, so I cut that in half. Let me wash this off real quick. And so this is what we have to work with. Let me take this in the light over here. So yeah, so it's kind of interesting. A lot of chalcedony running through there on the bottom. Good veins of it going up through the top, and then this kind of interesting colory pattern. Let me see if I can get this to focus a little better. Maybe that's about it, right? But yeah, so you got a few different options. I'll look at the other half here. We have a few different options of what you could do. You know, if you like a real patchy kind of brachia look with a lot of white, you could do a smaller one and get that olive green color. Or we could go into this top and get that real cool pattern right in here. So let's take this over to the table and throw a couple shapes on there and see what we can come up with. Okay, here's a couple shapes I just picked out of here. I'm trying to get this top here with that nice lines running through there, and then here tried to get a completely different look from that side to this side. Don't know how this chalcedony will look or how hard it is, so we will cut these two patterns out and then proceed from there. Alright, so we got them roughed out. So now we will take them and get them fine-tuned a little better. So like I said, I just ran these on that finer wheel, so when I draw my bezel line on, it's not so rough. So now I'm just going to draw the bezel line on the edge of this, And remember, hold your Sharpie in one spot and move your stone. This way you'll get a perfect line on there. So when you put your bezel line on there, let me get a little bit more light over here. You can do your bezel line, what do we have here? You can do your bezel line any thickness you want, depending on what you're going to use. If you want a thinner or thicker bezel, depending on what kind of fixture you're going to be putting it into, but it really doesn't matter. This one I went a little bit thinner because if you see how this stone looks, I got a lot less to work, so I'm going to need more area to work, so I didn't need that bezel real high on that one. So now we will start fine shaping these. Okay, on both these stones, this one you can see right there, we have a crumbly part. And no matter how far down I go, it just keeps crumbling out, crumbling out. This one has this major, major pit right there. Little one right there. And some other little defects around. So what can you do? Let me stop this and turn the camera around. So yeah, so what can you do when you get into a piece of stone like that that has those little imperfections? As you can see on both of them, you know, what are you going to do? Now what are you going to do? You got this far, you know, are you just going to throw them in the scrap bin and say, yeah, well, that was that. So yeah, there you have a few options you can do with these things. You know, you can redefine your shape, make your cab a lot smaller, cut those areas out, make your cab, you know, super flat, and then put a topper on it. Or you can fill it with epoxy and then let that dry and then grind down, and you'll kind of have a clear spot. But depending on your defect, like if you look at those defects are coming from the outside of the stone, so they're going to be awful dirty, awful messy. Could you take a drill bit in there and grind it all, or a diamond drill bit, a diamond bit, grind it all out, get that dirty stuff out of there, and then put 330 in there? Yeah, you could, but again, you know, now you're ending up with a stone that is how much hours of labor in work involved in it. You know, what are you going to end up with? You know, is it going to be worth all that hassle and all that thing? Yeah, maybe if it's a real rare stone, you know, or something really, really super expensive. That jasper, it's pretty cheap. I got tons of it. That was just a little, you know, when I started the video, that was just a little sliver that, you know, got thrown in the box in there, and, you know, and now there it is. So yeah, so I'm going to just, you know, scrap them. I mean, yeah, they would have looked cool and it would have been pretty neat, but because of those imperfections, yeah, I would have needed to start with something really thicker. So maybe the other slab, you know, because I cut that stone in half, maybe that other slab would have been thick enough that we could have ground down enough that we would have got out of those defects. Possibly, possibly not. And the little round one had some really cool looking hematite on there where it was really starting to shine in the middle. So yes, that would have made a great looking cab. Don't get me wrong. But again, you know, how much effort do you want to put in something like that, and what are you going to get out of it? Sometimes it's just best to, you know, what do they call it? File 13 those two stones and start something else. So don't feel bad. Everybody gets to those things. You know, I've had stones where I've been polishing them and they just cracked. I mean, that's how rock is. It just you just don't know until you're completely done what kind of problems that you're gonna run into. So yeah, so this time we're just gonna scrap it. Hey, that's okay, you know. So what? So I lost a little bit of time, you know. Yeah, a little bit of material. Yeah, very little bit of material. No big deal. So yeah, so we'll scrap it and we'll start on something else. No biggie, right? Yeah, sorry for that. I had to stop the camera. I started crying because I wrecked those two down. No. So yeah, like I say, that was it for that. It didn't end up like it always ends up. 2 nice looking cabs, 3, whatever. It ended up with no cabs. So again, that's the way it goes. So thanks everybody for watching, liking, subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, is there something you would have done to change the outcome? Possibly. Let me know. Thanks everybody. Have a good day. See you in a rock room near you. Bye.